Matthew, everyday audiophile, music lover, beer lover too, but music lover first. And today, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite go-to systems that I have. But before we do, let's talk about the beer. This is the Mayday IPA from Martin House Brewing. Now, this one's actually, it's a little different from the normal beers. Usually they have a sticker that they kind of adhere to the outside of the can. And I have to pour it in a glass because you can taste the glue that they use. It's not so with this. This is printed on, so this is nice. It's 6%. It's pretty light. And it tastes pretty good. Okay. So, system, a complete system from source all the way to the end. For those that know me, they know that I have a love for speakers. A lot of different kinds of speakers, and I've tried nearly every, I'm going to say, type of speaker out there. I've had open baffle. I've had single full range drivers. Two-way speakers like what I have right now in my media room. Three-way speakers, 3.5-way speakers, like what I would classify the Riga RS10s as. Anyways, goes all the way. Coaxials, though, is kind of where I want to land on this video. The speakers I want to talk about: the Coherent Audio GR10s, those being powered by the Audial A20. That's their kind of entry-level integrated amplifier, puts out about 20 watts. The DAC is the Audio LSAF, and then the streamer, the Holo Audio Red. So when I showed these speakers in Lone Star Audio Fest 2024, I showed them with the Triode Lab preamp and EL84 monoblocks, which those are back here. I just had the preamp fixed by another friend in the group, which is great. It's working again. It's wonderful. And it was a wonderful pairing with the GR10s. That 26 watts of the EL84 was more than enough to drive the high efficiency. It's like 92, 93 dB efficient coaxial speaker with a horn-loaded tweeter. More than enough to drive it. And I would say it was a wonderful pairing on the fact that, horn-loaded tweeters can sometimes be a little bright. These aren't. The GR10s aren't. But they sometimes can be bright. So having an amplifier that naturally tones down that high end just a little bit compared to solid state is pretty nice. It's pretty wonderful. That said, the system did have its issues for me. And it was really just an issue of convenience, as it were. And maybe mismatched prices on parts, right? Like, the GR10s, you can pick them up on the used market for about $2,500 USD. Right now, the current model is the Trim 10s, so it's really close. Just a floor staining version with the Super Tweeter as well. So I guess that counts as a 3-way speaker or 2.5-way. Not quite sure how Frank has his crossover there, but that's besides the point. You can pick it up for $2,500. Maybe the Trim 10 is more like $3,500 to $4,000. Pairing that with a preamp and amplifier combo that combined is like $15,000 is kind of unfair. It's an unfair matchup of components, in my opinion. So what I wanted to do instead was find a system that kind of had a right balance. And I've talked about this previously. As the total cost of the system goes up, I usually try to say the cost of the speakers should go down percentage-wise. So as you get to a really cheap system, that speaker may be 50% of the cost of the system, and I think it's totally worth it personally. So I started running the GR10s. This must have been a month ago now, but I started running them with a lot of different combinations of amps that I have And I have a lot. I like to collect gear for better or worse. My wife isn't too thrilled about it, but it is what it is. And where I landed was the Audial A20. It is a small integrated from Audial in Serbia. It's 20 watts per channel. It is a pretty plain box on the outside. There's no frills to it. You get a volume knob that you can push to change the channel, and really that's about it. You got 5 inputs on the back of it with a preamp out, which sounds pretty good, to be honest. That's another video later. But it's 20 watts. You can pick it up new for 1,200 euros. So what is that? About 1,400 USD. Or you can pick it up on the used market for half that, if we're going used market prices. Ahead of that, right now I'm using the Audial S5, but any of the Audial DACs would work. I think they're a wonderful pairing together. So if you get one, I do think you should get the other. Or if you get the integrated, you should get the DAC. For other reasons that I will go into at some point. And then for the streamer, right now I'm using the Holy Audio Red, but to be honest, you could run a Raspberry Pi and still get most of that quality at a much cheaper price point. It just depends on how much money you want to put onto that Holo Audio Red, or into that network streamer in general. But for what that system delivers, it is an incredible value, right? So what is this? This is, let's say, $2,500 for the speakers. Let's say you get $600 for the amp. It's probably $1,500 for the DAC if you can pick that up used. So you're looking at $5,000, including the streamer. $5,000 all in for this all digital system that's going to play anything that you really want it to play with the speaker that's so efficient. That system was hard to get rid of for me. It was hard to find a replacement purely because, I'm sorry, this is really good, by the way. It was hard to find a replacement because those speakers are so engaging. It's the difference between closing your eyes and hearing how expansive this soundstage is, to getting a speaker that truly sounded like the person was right in front of it. Like there was a palpable center stage there that you could reach out and grab with your hand. Something that very few speakers that I've heard have been able to recreate. Doesn't mean it's impossible, just maybe not in this sense. But let's talk about the sound quality. Let's go from this bottom end all the way to the high end, and why I consider it such an awesome combo. Something that I will come back to whenever I have the trim 10s in. I am getting rid of the GR10s, and that's purely down to my wife saying that I have too many pairs of speakers, which I can't blame her. But anyways, let's talk about the response. Being a 10-inch driver, a high efficiency 10-inch driver, even though it's ported on the back, yeah, the bass is a little weak. You're going to want a sub probably. If you're just listening to jazz, or you're just listening to, music that isn't super bass heavy, it probably isn't an issue. But for the vast majority of people, I imagine that you're going to want a sub. I personally have paired them with REL T7Xs, and I thought that was a fine pairing. I'd maybe go a little bit larger T9X if I wanted to stretch the budget a little bit, but besides that, it's I don't think you need more than that. But the low end on just the speaker itself, it is there. It kind of dips down into the mid 40s, I'd say, but there's no real punch to it. And that's just to be expected with a high efficiency 10-inch driver. So anyone that is looking at a big driver and saying, "Oh man, this is going to have great bass," you're going to be surprised in a bad way. Now, the bass that is there If you're listening to, instruments that are playing in the lower register, it is a very realistic tone. These drivers do a tremendous job of being very transparent and giving you exactly what is being fed to them. And that should be expected. The GR10s and the Trim 10s by extension. Frank does use a professional 10-inch monitor or 10-inch driver, a Radian driver, and modifies the tweeter, the crossover between the two to kind of create his speaker that he's selling. So, but that bass, it is very good bass. There's just not a lot of it, so you're gonna want to add a sub. Going on to the mid range and then the highs when we get to the tweeter. This is where the magic of this speaker is. It is very three-dimensional. It puts my Riga RS10s to shame when I'm looking at front-to-back soundstage. These speakers project a soundstage that is 30, 40 feet deep, but very forward-centered, if that makes sense. So if I were to look at a standard speaker that is the flat line between the two speakers, I'd say most speakers, when something is supposed to be right between them, it's going to be right between them. The GR10s places it a little bit further forward, and that's where you get that very palpable, you can touch that the person that's singing there, but it is still capable of reproducing a soundstage that goes that 20 feet back. You can still feel the space and how big it is. And I think that's what makes it special, is it's combining these two elements that usually don't go together in a speaker, in a way that is just wonderful to listen to. And you get that all the way through in the mids and the highs, but the mids especially is just so delicate. It reminds me truly of a full range driver, all of the benefits that you get from it. That no crossover, so you're going straight to the amplifier, and it's just very, very, very intimate in how it sounds. The nice thing that it has over those full range drivers, which again I do love, they have their flaws, but I do love them, is that it has a tweeter and it's coaxial, so it is time correct, which is wonderful. Time and phase correct, I guess. I need to go yeah, it is. It's time and phase correct. We're just going to edit that out of there. I'm going to have another drink. So moving on to the tweeter, I have, this is one area where it's not as strong as the mid range, but it's not bad, right? My personal opinion with horn-loaded tweeters in these speakers is that they can't be facing right at you. You need to be like 5 degrees off axis, which isn't a lot. So they're not towed in straight at you. They're towed in basically where the center of the tweeter needs to be, a few inches on either side of your ears. That's going to be prime. It's not that they're super bright or sibilant. I just preferred the treble response out of them a little bit off axis. And that's the nice thing is if you wanted to get an even more rolled off highs, not that it rolls off a lot, I'm talking just a dB or so, dB or two, you can just take them out a little bit more. You get a little bit better sound staging, you lose a little bit of those highs. It's great. But the ideal for me, I found again, was that 2 to 3 inches on either side. The highs are airy, again, very detailed. I was worried at first because I do really love silk dome tweeters, and this isn't a silk dome tweeter. It's an aluminum tweeter that's in a very deep horn loaded enclosure. Yeah, it doesn't possess all of the attributes of an aluminum tweeter that I usually associate it with, which is those harsh highs. Now, it doesn't mean that it's perfect. It is good. It's not as sweet to listen to, in my opinion, compared to just a pure soft dome tweeter, which is, again, my favorite. but it's enjoyable. I never found myself listening to it being fatigued, which is really all I truly ask for. But I will say what you're there for is the mid-range. The tweeter is just a benefit in that you get the high extension up to 20K. It's not the reason that you buy the speaker. You buy it for the mid-range. Okay, let's talk about how these speakers pair with the Audial A20 and the Audial S5. These are two components that I will talk about separately soon, but I wanted to touch on why I've chosen them as the companion of these speakers, and that largely has to come down to two things. One is it's solid state. I do love tubes, but solid state's just easier sometimes. You can leave it on. The remote control is nice. It's great. Two, it does sound good. It has a sweetness. It is, I would say, even though it's maybe a little bit bass shy, so it's not the best pairing with this speaker in that sense because the speaker is already a little bass shy. It has a sweetness in the upper mid bass into the mid, so the entire vocal range that I think is a wonderful pairing with the speaker. Its highs are also ever so slightly rolled off to my ear, which again is a wonderful pairing for the speaker. So everything besides the low end, I think the amp just truly delivers a first class presentation. And because it's an integrated, it's just a single box, which is nice. The only thing that it doesn't have is the DAC input, which is why I usually recommend pairing it with the Audial S5 or the S4 or his Aya, any of the DACs that he has that uses the TDA 1541 chip. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the DAC. Like I said, I am going to talk about all of his Hall of Hedges gear pretty soon. I'm just awaiting the gear to come in, and it's going to be a nice stack. That's for sure. I truly can't wait. But yeah, that's really wanted to talk. I wanted to talk about the Coherent GR10s before they kind of left my household, and I never got to hear them again. They are a truly wonderful speaker. Just push came to shove, and my wife needed her to be happy, and I'm running out of room. But wonderful speakers. If you are interested in Frank's speakers at Coherent Audio, I would totally hit him up. I think his Trim 10 is one of the best speakers that you can get in that price range, especially if that kind of speaker is what you're looking for. I think you can't go wrong. But anyways, cheers, and I will see y'all next week.